I would describe DC on film these days as a cluster if you asked me to describe it diplomatically. It has been handled a little poorly. I want to be a competitor to the MCU that tried to catch up by cramming a half-decade's worth of character development, world building, and plot into a single film. And to spend the next 10 years lurching drunkenly from disastrous failure to inexplicable success and back again, plagued by a panicking and interfering studio that couldn't seem to decide what it wanted, is never a good idea. As anyone who has arrived late to a house party and tried to play catch-up can attest, a succession of executives who were ousted after staying just long enough to reverse the work of their predecessors. But by 2022, it was clear that something needed to happen since even Warner Brothers can only take so much failure. It was necessary to assign someone with a genuine creative vision to lead DC on film and to provide them with the resources, authority, and time necessary to restore the franchise. James Gunn was that man, and Creature Commando's Superman was his first significant test. Now, I'm not joking when I say that this film is essentially everything. I mean the whole superhero genre, not simply James Gunn's work or DC movies. Every major studio has released an almost constant series of embarrassing failures over the past few years, but never give up hope. Although Sony's Deadpool and Wolverine was a huge smash, the decline in superhero films since Avengers Endgame cannot be reversed by a single hit film. Superman must be successful. So when the first teaser trailer was released yesterday, everyone's eyes were on it. What is it like in reality then? Is it a disgusting and absurd display of utter embarrassment? Or does it give hope that a film will salvage DC and restore the entire superhero genre? It begins with Superman lying wounded and bleeding in the snow, which is a depressing scene. And this is the ideal metaphor for how the public views the character after he was Zack Sned to within an inch of his life. Indeed, it creates a sense of urgency and drama because, in all honesty, if someone or something can beat the living daylights out of Superman, it must be a serious threat. However, I must admit that I'm not particularly fond of the suit. I know it's harsh to compare him to Henry Cavill, but David Corenswet does seem like a bit of a downgrade in terms of physicality, and it looks padded and cheap. He appears in brief scenes as Clark Kent on the Daily Planet, and everything looks nice except for the terrible Gen Z bird's nest hairstyle. It's a nice whistle-stop tour of all the things and people who are significant to him, and we get to see Jonathan Kent and Lois Lane. However, I'm not sure about the John Williams music played on electric guitar. I know James Gunn is a huge fan of his music from the 1980s, but wow, it's like drawing a mustache on the Mona Lisa to transform such a great soundtrack into a melancholy guitar solo. In principle, you could do it, but you need to ask yourself if you should. However, the dog appears right when you thought things were becoming a little too serious and solemn and not James Gunny enough. The dog, of course. I have 2 dogs myself, so I love them just as much as the next man. I'll be honest, though. I'm not sure I want to see a superpowered one pull Superman by his cape through the snow. You know, it kind of undermines the verisimilitude for me. Yes, I am aware that this is meant to represent Krypto from the comics, but even at that time, it was a ridiculous concept, and it looks even worse on screen, which is likely why no other Superman movie has ever used it. However, I must confess that my anarchist side would adore Zack Snyder's interpretation. Despite being quite youthful, Lex Luthor appears respectable in the remaining teaser. There are a variety of characters to work with, including Hawkgirl, Green Lantern, Mr. Terrific, and Metamorpho. But I will return to that in a moment. I'm not totally sure why a Superman movie would feature a kaiju, but whatever. Finally, the romance between Superman and Lois receives a lot of attention, which is good to see in a contemporary Hollywood film where functioning heterosexual partnerships are less common than feminine apologies. What do I think in general? Was it a creative success or a humiliating failure? In actuality, it's neither of those things. For the most part, it is safe, a careful trailer that follows all the standard superhero cliches, avoids anything particularly wild or contentious, and seems almost desperate to please from a studio that is obviously anxious about this movie. I'm not sure if that's a good or bad thing in this instance, but James Gunn's typical self-assurance and creative flair are rather absent. You see, I've always been hesitant about Gunn starring in a Superman movie. His peculiar, sardonic, and subversive brand of humor doesn't seem to fit in well with a character like this, which is my first reservation. Don't get me wrong, he is skilled at his job, but it's a very specialized one, similar to that of the Suicide Squad in Guardians of the Galaxy. For the Guardians films, his irreverent style of humor and obvious penchant for brooding, ethically dubious anti-heroes work perfectly. But Superman is a very different animal. A man who proudly fights for truth, justice, and the American way without hiding behind a dozen layers of postmodernist, subversive, and deconstructive sarcasm. He is a throwback to a more innocent, idealistic, and sincerely honest kind of superhero. And I might be mistaken, but it seems to me that this straightforward reading of the character is the complete opposite of everything that Gunn as a creative stands for. The second reservation is that Gunn obviously enjoys team-up films with large ensemble casts of likable misfits who must learn to put aside their differences and cooperate. The Suicide Squad, all three Guardians films, Peacemaker, and Creature Commandos have all relied on this fundamental idea. That's all well and good, but the problem is that I don't want that in a Superman film. Superman arguing with a group of oddballs, exchanging insults and jokes, and having to gradually win them over is not something I want to witness. Since this is meant to be his film and not a springboard for 6 or 7 spin-off characters, I want to depict him being a hero and able to stand on his own 2 feet. However, after watching the teaser, I believe that one of those doubts has been allayed and the other has essentially been verified. Aside from Krypto, the tone is straightforward and earnest generally, and I get the sense that Gunn is genuinely taking this seriously. Whatever you think of the man, he is familiar with comic books, so I'm sure he knows what makes Superman a compelling character. However, the abundance of supporting characters suggests that he will likely return to his comfort zone with the misfits, which seems like a major mistake in this case. Instead of trying to force the same formula on characters and worlds where it is neither necessary nor desired, I don't want every James Gunn film to be another Guardians clone. In the end, though, a lot of this is simply speculation. Just a teaser. The movie itself may still end up being the greatest superhero movie in years, but a lot can change between now and July. However, as a teaser meant to raise our anticipation, I don't think this one does it justice. It was undoubtedly a success, but I have a feeling that regardless of your opinion on James Gunn's writing, you will find something to support it. Since a lot actually hinges on Gunn's ability to deliver, I'm going to attempt to have an open mind and hope that he can. Anyway, that's all I've got for today. If you enjoyed this breakdown and want to see more content like this, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel. It really helps me out and keeps the content coming. Also, let me know your thoughts on the teaser in the comments below. Do you think James Gunn Superman can save DC?